So Modi said "Achhe din aane wale hain" during the entire campaign, and now he's talking about the kadvi dawai, the bitter pill. How bitter is that going to be? What are the kind of options which he has? Is he going to increase or reduce taxes? Is his budget going to work for the middle class? Can he actually take away subsidies? There's so much to talk about. And joining us today, and it's great, it's great that we have some of the finest minds with us once again in this budget coverage. And joining us back, let's introduce, of course, Navika Kumar and I will take you through the budget coverage. Our political editor joining us from Delhi, Dr. Omkar Goswami, senior economist and founder and chairperson of CERG. I never realized how you pronounce that. Kurg Advisory Private Limited. Someone we all respect very much. Omkar, it's good to see you back. It's great to see Meghnad Desai, Lord Meghnad Desai, one of India's best regarded economists, and if I may say so, political analysts as well after this election, live from London. Also joining us today from London is someone I will not introduce in a Modified way, but as chairman of SK Advisors, man with huge corporate experience and a great sense of humor, sometimes over the top. Sunil Alag joining us from London. Dr. Rajiv Kumar, senior fellow of the Center for Policy Research, someone who understands industry, corporate affairs, the macroeconomic picture very well. And my dear friend and the very respected global strategist of Deutsche Bank from Singapore, making his mark in the international arena. His words are taken very, very seriously these days. Sanjeev Sanyal from Singapore, thank you very much. So where do we begin? Navika, I throw it open to you, and then you can take the discussion forward with our panelists, From an Aam Aadmi perspective, when you talk about tough measures, bitter pills, then you're beginning this whole guessing game. And that's what happened, when Modi said that the previous government left everything empty, the financial health has hit rock bottom, and he went on to say that no matter how loving a child is, and I remember, a mother has to administer the bitter medicine to cure that child. Now, since then, all of us, I'm sure including you, have been wondering how serious the infection is and how bitter that pill is going to be. Navika, where do you think it's going to go eventually on budgeting?
Well, clearly, Arnab, this budget is going to be either for better days or bitter pills. That's one way of looking at it. Will it be high on sops or will it be low on populism? That is the tightrope that Arun Jaitley will need to walk. He's the finance minister. But let me tell you what an insider in the finance ministry and a top government source told me. He said the Congress had left such gaping holes in the budget that if the BJP were to actually expose it, the international acceptance of the Indian budgeting process would go for a toss and we would be downgraded without a batting of an eyelid. So they can't really expose the Congress on that. So what is left is really the bitter pill that they'll have to swallow in this budget, because there really isn't enough money to do anything and there are gaping holes in the budget that need to be covered. So whichever way you're looking at it, higher taxes or lower subsidies, these are the two sides of the same coin, and that's the way Finance Minister Arun Jaitley will need to look at it. And clearly, Omkar Goswami sitting here with me is the economist, of course. And Omkar, which way do you think Arun Jaitley is going to look at this?
Navika, let me start by saying this is Mr. Jaitley's first budget of a new government which has come into power after 1984 with a majority on its own party's team. Okay. While there has to be a lot of control on expenditure, the fact of the matter is that he has to give a signal of change that had long disappeared under UPA 2 and indeed even UPA 1. So let me say the three things that I would expect him to do. One which has relatively less cost, one which is a little bit costlier, and then a bitter pill, and then we can talk about it later. The first thing he should do, and everybody, bar none, has told him, except his civil servants, that he will win huge kudos getting rid of the retrospective tax legislation that the man who sits on top of Raisina Hill introduced as the finance minister. If nothing else, that alone will create a huge positive for the country. The second, it costs money. It's not that huge. It's about 13,000 crore, perhaps, is to get rid of the dividend distribution tax. Because a dividend comes out of net profits. The tax was put in by different people, Yashwant Sinha, then Chidambaram, in order to garner some revenue. There's no basis for that tax, okay? I think these two things would be great positives as a signal.
And that would take care of the markets as well.
That will take care of the markets and the signal. The two things that he has to do, one as a bitter pill and one as action. The bitter pill will have to be without specifying in any great detail, because if you specify in too much detail, then like Yashwant Sinha, you'll have to roll back in 48 hours. So you cannot specify in details, but you can knock off 10 to 15% of the fertilizer subsidy. You can knock off definitely 10% of the food subsidy, and even in a milieu of higher crude oil prices, you can knock off about 10% on the fuel subsidy. Do not specify. Let the ministries do what they will do in the course of the year.
No, but you'll have to specify.
Just quietly cut the number.
You have to specify, Omkar.
Just cut the number.
You'll have to specify because, okay,
No.
By the way, this is an open conversation.
Arnab, I don't have to.
Omkar, I know we have been missing each other, and I am.
You don't have to specify. You can cut the number. You can simply cut the expenditure.
No, but what if you have the scope of the food security bill?
You are just cutting the expenditure.
No, but who will you target? And which area
I'm just cutting the expenditure, Arnab. I'm just saying what I will specify, Arnab, that what I'm going to simply say as finance minister is that these amounts are going to be reduced. How they will be reduced, when the price increase will take place on urea is not for me to say in the budget, okay? And finally, the fourth is he has a kitty called disinvestment. There are at least 10 public sector banks where he can disinvest sequentially and carefully, and he has 10 large listed public sector enterprises where the government holds sizable stakes, well above 50%. He can bring it down to 52% if he wants to be safe. But over a next 24-month period, carefully done, this can be done.
No, Omkar,
so that's my view.
I take your point. Now, coming with an interruption, I just want to add one point. God is in the details. You have 1.15 lakh crore on food subsidies. Significant portion, 70% or more of that, 88,500 crore is for the food law. So when you're saying you trim the expenditure, then the follow-up question, and Surya can take that are you in a position today, within 2 months or less of the general election, to trim the scope of the food security bill to target only the really poor? Can you do that? Now, Surya, you want to take that? And by the way, feel free to come into each other.
Yeah,
and Sanjeev, feel free to come in as well into the conversation whenever you want. Yeah.
Let's look at it from 2 points of view. The real budget which will be presented by the government will be in February next year. This is an interim budget. And I think what Mr. Jaitley is going to, I suppose what he needs to do is to show that the first couple of budgets are going to be economic budgets and not political budgets, because he will have to get into, in the 4th and 5th year, into a political budget again. The first couple of years will have to be pure economic budgets. And as far as I'm concerned, what Omkar is saying, perhaps they won't be able to do that straight away because they've got 3 state elections coming up right now. So there'll be a bit of politics played up to February. The February budget will be the bitterest pill of all. Let me just tell you that
and
this
also
time,
the fact,
what they're going to do is going to lay out a roadmap.
Not to say, so they'll have to show some of that. There's the politics of the budget that they'll have to keep in mind.
But let me tell you, let me tell you 1 second. This Achhe Din Aane Wale Hai, Modi has said 10 times. For 60 years, the Congress has led this. Give me 60 months.
Can you risk
You're
that?
expecting him to do it in 6 weeks.
Can you risk that?
I've been talking to people. Nobody is expecting Achhe Din in 2 weeks. I mean, he's not in charge of a bad monsoon. He's not in charge
No,
of
so
everything.
then you-
Everyone
then you
is
should say-
saying,
no, then
if
you
you
should-
want me to... let me even tell you on railways, please, before you all carry on, a lot of people said we don't mind paying the extra fares if the service improves.
Who's
the
told you
trains
that?
are
Who's
collapsing.
told you
Where is
that?
he going to get the money?
That's
I
your
think he's going to
guesstimate.
transparently appeal.
Who? That's your guesstimate.
But that's
No,
only
you're
Modi
making
man
yourself
like
feel
See
you
what
are
he did in
talking like
Gujarat.
that. The general
Arnab, one
man
last
on the
point.
street doesn't feel that.
No,
You're
one last
actually
point.
saying people are saying thank you for the
No,
for
one
the rail
last
fare
point
hike.
I'll
Come
make.
on.
In Gujarat, he made farmers... One second, he made... Look,
Can you forget
if you
the
had
Gujarat
increased
model
railway
for once?
fares at 2% every year for the last... No, 1 second. If you had increased it at 2 or 3% every year, would you have had to increase by 15% this year?
No,
No.
you see,
the last government for 6 years because of Mamata Banerjee never increased fares.
No, you
Can
see,
you imagine for 5 years, no increase in fares? Obviously, you'll have to increase it by 15% in one shot.
Okay, Meghna, this side.
Can I come
Please,
in here?
let's not- and then-
Sanjeev Saria wants to
No,
come in
and then
before you. Yes,
one last
Sanjeev.
point.
Yes, Sanjeev. How unpopular can a... No, one second. Well, let
I
Sanjeev
would-
in.
I would-
Sanjeev in first because he said, "Can I come in first before you?" And in this conversation, the person who puts their finger in first comes in first. Yes, Sanjeev.
Okay, I agree with the point that I think the finance minister would not have had a lot of time to really come up with a full budget. So I think I agree with the idea that the real Modi-Jaitley budget is going to be in February. But nonetheless, I think investors around the world are going to look at this budget for big pointers. So it's not just about the big measures that are actually announced, but about the broader economic framework that we should expect over the next 5 years. So I think it's not just about the purely fiscal measures that will be announced. This budget will be watched for much more than that.
Which is what? Be specific. Be specific with what? For example, Sanjeev.
Arnab.
What's okay.
So I think one of the important things here is to recognize that India has a serious supply side problem. Even the inflation problem is not a demand problem. It's a real problem with the efficiency of the productive side of the Indian economy. And I think in order to sort that out, we need to begin to see a serious reform agenda, which is beyond just the purely fiscal aspect of this budget. So I think this budget will be watched for signs on a much broader agenda, whether it's labor laws or its simplification of the tax system. All of these issues will be have to be discussed. It's not just about how do you somehow get this fiscal deficit down, which is of course important, but I don't think that is the only thing people will be watching for.
Yes, so you're saying it's about the signal that is sent out. Yes, well, that signal, some people will say when you've got a huge mandate like the one you've got, you should risk unpopular situations. You can choose to be a little unpopular. Yes, Lord Desai.
Arnab, on the signal base.
I agree, but those may not be fiscal measures as Omkar was saying right in the beginning. There may be all kinds of other measures as well. As I said, labor laws, clearly something is happening.
Wait till February
something is
for the
brewing in
fiscal
there.
measures.
Those could come through.
Lord Desai.
They will come in Feb.
Look, the problem, the situation is that the vote on account was really a misleading document. It is a lot of window dressing. The deficit announced for last year is not accurate.
Agreed.
The deficit projected for this year is not accurate. The expenditure numbers have been artificially suppressed. Arun Jaitley has first of all to explain what the state of public finances is. As Navika was saying, the world has to be told that the vote on account was actually just a completely misleading document. The government doesn't have money to do anything populist at all. They don't even have money to do food security bill, the way the budget is. Now, unless Arun Jaitley gets a lot of money from disinvestment within fiscal 14-15, he has no money to spend on food
So where will he
security.
cut? Then
That
he has
is the
to
way
cut somewhere.
Chidambaram
Can he
has
cut
left the budget.
subsidies? You're right. The vote on account.
I think he is in a very good situation. He's in a very good situation saying, I have no money to spend on food security. I can only do this much. That's all I will do.
No, so where does he cut? You're saying there's only a limited amount of money to be made of disinvestment. Let's take the example of subsidies. The vote on account figures, for example, on subsidies were 200 crores above the last year's figures. So you are obviously the figures in the vote on account are wrong because subsidies are being seriously underestimated.
Arnab.
No, so where will...
Arnab.
Yes, go ahead.
Arnab. Listen to me. Arnab, if he actually meets all those spending requirements, the deficit numbers would definitely be more like 6 or 7% instead of 4.5%.
Sir,
that is a reality.
Sir, can Modi cut
either,
subsidies? Can Modi cut
Jaitley says,
subsidies?
I can't help it now. I go to 7%.
So what did?
Either he cuts subsidies. Listen to me, please listen to me. All I'm saying is either he says I'm going to go on giving subsidies and risk a 7% budget deficit, or he can say I'm going to cut all subsidies.
No, sir, look at the politics of this, sir.
That is a stark reality.
Let's go to Rajiv Kumar.
Politics of it is nothing. The economics of it is impossible.
No, sir. Any prime minister will have to look at the politics of it, won't he, Rajiv Kumar? After all, Narendra Modi said the first right of the country's coffers belong to the poor. Now, does that mean, therefore, that a rights-based, subsidies-based approach of the UPA government will continue in some way? Sanjeev says this is a time where foreign investors will look at a signal.
No, but Arnab, I think the most important thing is to restore the credibility of the fiscal process, restore the credibility of the government, which has been completely lost because of the fudging that has gone on in the past years. And what Navika has heard is from senior bureaucrats who want to hide behind this excuse that if you do that, then the rating agencies will downgrade us. Mr. Jaitley needs to come up clean with what the state of our fiscal is and draw a line underneath that and then say, ladies and gentlemen, I cannot achieve 4.1% fiscal deficit in 14-15. I will achieve, however, 4.4%, and this is how I will do it. In doing so, you are absolutely right, he cannot do away with all the subsidies. But what he can do away is with our petroleum subsidies, because the UPA government has set that ball in motion. What he can do, therefore, is to let the diesel prices rise. And what he can do is to make a real effort at resource mobilization. Would you know that there is 4.5 lakh crore of tax revenues held up in litigation, of which 2.5 lakh crore is at the level of the Chief Commissioner Appellates? Now Mr. Jaitley can and must bring the broom, must bring the reform to the CBDT. If he does that, if he actually announces an agenda of overhauling the CBDT in our country, not make it, the tool of government harassment, etc., etc., I think there is enough resources there. Just one figure, Arnab. Mr. Chidambaram announced a tax on the super rich last year, a 10% surcharge, who are people earning about 1 crore. And he said only 43,000 people, it will be applied only to 43,000 people. I told him, sir, that 43,000 are found in West Andheri. And why wouldn't this number be more like 430,000? The tax net has to be widened. A serious effort at resource mobilization has to be done. And finally, Mr. Jaitley will have to tell the industry quite candidly, ladies and gentlemen, please don't pressurize me into giving you one concession after the other. I'd heard Adi Godrej other days make a whole litany of demands. He is not in a position to do that. He will do that later on. But first and foremost, he has to show that he's got the fiscal in his hand and he's going to bring about a change and bring about an improvement in the fiscal situation of the country. That's the key.
I think Rajiv, what you're saying is let's take a look at agriculture.
I entirely agree with Rajiv Kumar. I entirely agree with Rajiv.
In an election, so there has to be some politics to this budget. You know what Mr. Arun Jaitley said on the day one of ending his office.
That doesn't have to be. Now hang on. We got to get rid of this mentality. We got to get rid of this mentality.
So what? No, just a minute. No, Meghnad Desai. Meghnad Desai.
At this moment, growth is really low.
Sir, 1 minute. Sir, Meghnad Desai, you keep talking about mentality. Can any political party, and by the way, there are elections to come. You think a general election is the last election? There's an election in Maharashtra.
Listen,
There are significant
listen,
elections.
the country has ruined itself.
Can the BJP risk a situation where it is compelled to pull back? All of you talk about pulling back fuel. So all of you talk about pulling back fuel subsidies as if it is the easiest thing, most easy thing to achieve. Can you risk? Can you trigger the unpopular situation that will emerge from that?
Arnab, that's already started.
Arnab, can I say something
The UPA
here?
government did that. The NDA government doesn't have to do anything
Sir,
at all.
Can I say something here?
Yes, go ahead.
It's not difficult.
Can I say something?
Yes, Lord Desai.
Can I say something?
Yes,
here?
Lord Desai, please do.
Most subsidies help the rich, not the poor. Most subsidies are pro-rich, petroleum subsidy, diesel subsidy, fertilizer subsidy.
Sir, I'm talking of cooking gas and diesel.
They are not for the poor.
Sir, I'm talking of cooking gas and diesel.
He doesn't need to. He doesn't,
Yes, that too. Not
Diesel doesn't help the poor.
cooking gas
Diesel
is
doesn't
owned
help
by
the
a
poor.
minority of people. Cooking gas is a minority of people. It's not for the poor. LPG subsidy is not for the poor. We got to get rid of this mentality that Congress inculcated that anything they subsidy is all for the poor. Well, it is not.
Right.
And we have wrecked public finances doing this, and this government has to have the courage to stop
the diesel
it.
subsidy is not.
No, 1 second. I still remember in my conversation with Modi, my conversation with Modi a few days before the results, I asked him this question and he said the first right of the country's coffer belongs to the poor. My government will cater to the poor. We have to listen to the poor. We have to cater to their needs. And he says, these are my exact words.
Yeah.
You think Mr. Modi will not think of the impact that, this hard approach of yours will...
But LPG is not...
He's a politician after all.
LPG is not used by the poor.
Sir, LPG was a big election issue.
Used by the poor.
Arnab, let's get off the LPG 1 second.
Yes.
Can we
LPG is
get off
not
the
used
LPG
by the
case?
poor.
And I just want to raise another question. Now, I want to raise another question. Agricultural income is tax-free. If you are talking about the poor in India, which is 500 million people, they are the workers in agriculture. They are going to be tax-free in any case. The guys who make money out of agriculture are the zamindars and the big guys. Why is agriculture tax-free? Why every time we feel that, if you tax agriculture, you tax the poor. The poor does not earn enough money to pay taxes.
It's in the Constitution.
So all I'm saying is, supposing he says, can I just go one more? Just one other point I want to raise.
Sunil, be realistic. Sunil, alag. Omkar Goswami.
You don't understand what's going on.
Sunil, first and foremost, let's not open up this issue. This has been opened up several times. To tax agriculture requires constitutional reform, which requires both houses to pass it.
Exactly.
This government, as of now, does not have the requisite votes in both houses. It's a constitutional.
Okay, 1 second. I agree with you, Omkar. And I hate to say this.
Relatively tough budget, but with very, very good reform signals and very good signals which don't cost the exchequer more, such as I said, getting rid of the retrospective tax legislation and going in for disinvestments on a steady and serious basis. Remember, disinvestment is something that the UPA 2 completely lost track of, even UPA 1, and there's a hell of a lot to be had. But however, also remember that I think people should go back to 1991. In July 1991, a rather poor orator called Manmohan Singh, and Jaitley is a far better orator, stood up to give his budget. It was the toughest budget that you could ever think of. 1991 and 1992 were the toughest budgets that India saw. And yet, the tide turned. So, to turn the tide does not require you to be extravagant. You can be absolutely honest, sincere, and be parsimonious where you need to be, and be sensible and directed where you need to be, and you can turn the tide. So I do not believe
I agree with that.
There are places that you cannot cut expenditure. Also, remember, you're talking of 3 items: petroleum, food, and fertilizer. You should look at the expenditure budget. Please look at the huge amounts of allocation under various heads. You can knock off 10% without a problem, without anyone even knowing it, because no one even knows what those demand for grants are. So there are
sorry,
ways of doing
Omkar,
it.
sorry, but
I don't know if
Chidambaram
he's
No,
has
no, what's
already done enough of that.
Because
Rajiv
the time
Kumar.
is very short.
Rajiv Kumar is rebutting you, Omkar Goswami.
He may well not be able to do all of it.
No, Rajiv Kumar, Rajiv Kumar, what's wrong with what Omkar Goswami says? Even fertilizers, it has gone up fourfold in the UPA period. You know, this cooking gas and diesel have gone up 18 times in the UPA period. So why is it not achievable to shave off 10% without it getting noticed, as Omkar Goswami says?
But the fertilizer subsidy,
Rajiv Kumar.
exactly what Omkar is saying.
Rajiv Kumar is rebutting him. Let's go one by one. Rajiv Kumar.
What Omkar was saying that he can shave off 10% from expenditure other than the three major subsidies. I'm afraid Mr. Chidambaram has left no room for that. He has had draconian cuts of both on plan and non-plan expenditures. 1,80,000 crore were cut away last year. Now on the fertilizer subsidy, what he should do is to first announce the increase in gas prices, which the NDA, I'm afraid, is dithering upon, because otherwise there will be no investment in gas. Then there will be a higher subsidy to be paid, which the government should not pay, because that would then mean that the fertilizer subsidy in real terms will come down. On the petroleum subsidy, as I said earlier, diesel should be allowed to increase. The UPA government has set it in motion. NDA doesn't need to touch it. Kerosene subsidy, 9,000 crore of it, 50% goes into the adulteration. Even Montek admitted that. I think officially.
No, that's
nobody uses kerosene these days.
But
I'm telling you, half of that goes into adulteration of the petrol. In Alwar district, when they switched from subsidy to actually just the sort of cash for subsidy, the subsidy amount came down by 80%. That's an empirical fact.
Yes, Navika.
So you can take away the fuel subsidies with just one last thing, Arnab. Just one last thing. The poor will be helped by creating growth and employment, and not by subsidies.
And how do you create growth and employment? Where is the investment going to come from? Where is the money to spend into these productive assets?
You said the government should increase gas prices. Those are reforms that you're talking about. Let's look at the practicality. The government has kept it frozen as a decision for the next 3 months. So clearly there are political compulsions, and political compulsions mean that at any given time, while you'll have to give the signals for growth, you could do that by announcing a GST roadmap with a tight time frame at this moment. You could do that by DTC, but it's very difficult to actually cut subsidies for Mr. Arun Jaitley, because there is a politics of the budget that he has to keep in mind. He has alliance partners. We just saw that even in the fuel price hike, the Maharashtra partners came and got a partial rollback on the suburban railway prices. So there is a reality of politics that has to be kept in mind. How do you think the finance minister is really going to do that?
It's not
only because there's a Maharashtra elections today.
The counter coming from Singapore from Sanjeev, please. Sanjeev, let's let Sanjeev counter, Navika. I think he wanted to comment.
One thing over here that you have. I in fact agree with Navika, because the fact is, yes, we need to reduce all these subsidies, but I don't think in a situation with the huge gaps we're talking about and possibly a major drought coming through, these subsidies can be reduced very substantially in one shot. So I think, we need to begin taking a longer term view in terms of getting simplifying the tax system and creating buoyancy, and take a wider view of reforms. This cannot just be about fiscal issues, because the whole point is to get the economy going and get tax buoyancy going. And for that, you cannot just look at this narrow issue of fiscal, because there is a wider issue here about getting this economy growing faster.
What about the Aam Aadmi? What do they get?
No, so this is the point.
Person who voted the BJP in, what does he get?
Point is,
what does the Aam Aadmi, the middle class, and by the way, the middle class was a large part of the support base of the BJP. What do they get? What do they get?
Jobs.
Jobs. When?
Jobs.
4 years from now.
Jobs.